Hello, everybody, and welcome to Charts with Dan on this Monday. Although I am filming the show on Sunday evening, which the way the news cycle has been working means that something big is going to break between now and the time the show goes out. But hopefully I'm going to be as up to date as I can be. I was ejected from the void that I did the show from last week to a different void. Tomorrow is a big day for us as far as our redesign and reconstruction of the set. So once again, thank you so much for bearing with us during this transitional time. I'm not going to make any hardcore promises, but I will say that I hope and I think that we will be able to show you the new setup by next week's show. I'm super excited about it. We've got some really cool stuff that we're working on that I really can't wait to share with you. But for right now, thank you for joining me here on this couch in front of this blank wall as we look at what happened in the past weekend at the box office and some news about some more changes to the theatrical schedule. The news keeps getting worse for theater owners, but let's look at what the top 5 this week was, and it was a bit of a surprise. I've got to be honest, I'd never heard of this movie. I didn't know it was coming out, but The War with Grandpa actually unseats Tenet at number 1. Tenet had been number 1 for 5 weeks. The War with Grandpa is the new number 1 movie. It's another Robert De Niro grandpa movie, but this one's for the whole family. This was a movie that was marketed, that they were pushing people to go see in theaters. Obviously, at $3.6 million, it's not blowing the doors off the place, but it's enough to be the new number 1 movie. So The War with Grandpa actually unseats Tenet. Tenet had another drop around 20%. However, we're also seeing the potential consequences of the closing of most Regal locations here in the United States. However, as I was reading, there were 7 in California that were left open that were some of the top grossing venues for Tenet that were open, and that kind of goes to show you how many theaters were really making money. Not a lot, because there are 7 Regal locations open, one of them including one that is very near Los Angeles here at the Irvine Spectrum that is still open and playing Tenet, but most Regal locations closed, so even harder for people to get out to the movies. However, War with Grandpa there at number 1. As I mentioned, Tenet at number 2 with $2.1 million. Hocus Pocus still playing to the Halloween crowd for people that want to go to the movies at number 3. Then we have New Mutants just there under $1 million at $685,000 at number 4. Unhinged at number 5. And so what does that do as far as moving the needle for the domestic box office here in 2020? Well, the answer is not much. We're not going to see much needle moving happening unless there's some drastic new opening, unless New York and LA essentially both open their theaters simultaneously, which does not look like that's going to happen anytime soon. Tenet is still at number 8. It's putting some distance between it and The Gentleman. It's still got a lot of distance to go, though, if it's going to catch Onward, Call of the Wild, Invisible Man, which is kind of the next tier. So not anticipating a whole lot of movement on this box office chart anytime in the next few weeks. However, there was some movement on the worldwide chart, and it involves some films that we saw come out. As we mentioned, in China, their National Day holiday has just passed the week-long period, and so we're seeing a lot of movement with those films that came out. The 800 still the number 1 movie of the worldwide for 2020 so far. Bad Boys for Life, still number 2. Tenet is there at number 3. However, soon to pass it is My People, My Homeland, which is one of the films released in China for the National Day celebration. In just one country, it is going to bypass Tenet's global gross and bump Tenet down to number 4. It already leaps over Sonic the Hedgehog and Dolittle. Then we have Zhang Jia, which jumps up 1 spot to number 7. It could very well top Dolittle. However, the legs at the Chinese box office is a different situation, so we don't know if it's going to get up to Sonic the Hedgehog levels, but that bumps Birds of Prey down 2 spots, and then we have The Invisible Man and Onward there at numbers 9 and 10. This is a story that we have talked about a lot over the last few weeks as the Chinese box office begins to open up. They're now reportedly at 75% capacity at their theaters. And I was reading an article saying that the gap between what the number 1 movie-going market in the world is, because of these films that came out during the National Day celebration in China, the gap between the United States and China has shrunk significantly. And that, especially if movies keep bailing out of the domestic release schedule here in the United States this year, it is very likely that for the first time ever, China will bypass the United States as the number 1 market for film in the world. Now, that is going to come with a huge asterisk attached, because of everything going on with COVID-19. But it is something that had already been prognosticated as perhaps happening in the next decade or so. And I think that's what we keep seeing with the coronavirus and what's going on, not just as regards the United States and China, but when you look at the film industry in general, is it's pressing the fast forward button on things that people were already predicting, but that are becoming necessities. Things like shortening the theatrical window, things like movies going straight to premium video on demand, things like Disney putting some of their movies directly on their streaming service. These were all moves that had been predicted as potentially happening down the road. However, we're seeing an accelerated timeline of those experiments happening. Some of them are working, some of them are not working. For example, Bill and Ted Face the Music, I was reading, was compared to the budget that it was made for, has actually done fairly well on VOD because it's made back enough money when you don't have to take the cut out of all of that money that goes to the theaters, a lot more that goes to the studios. They're very pleased with the performance of that film because of the budgetary restrictions that it was made on. It's able to return that investment from the premium video on demand. However, we've also talked about Mulan and the fact of how much money is Mulan making. And as a matter of fact, this week we saw Disney making Mulan available as a $30 premium video demand purchase on platforms outside of Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, iTunes, Vudu, lots of different services now. So you didn't have to be a Disney Plus subscriber. You could just buy Mulan for $30. Is that a planned move? Is that something Disney has decided to do because they weren't happy with the numbers on Disney Plus? They're not saying anything. Of course they're not saying anything. But it seems like if Mulan was doing an amazing number, like that article we talked about a few weeks ago had projected, that if it had done $300 million or whatever, that they would just keep it where it was. It seems like they're trying to get more out of Mulan by widening its reach to different services. However, they've already announced that if you have Disney Plus, you're going to get it in early December for free anyway. So it's a big mess out there. It's a big mess out there. And but I think we are seeing things happening on a much quicker timeline than we would have seen them if things had progressed as normal, which would have been fantastic, and I would have liked that, but that's not the world we live in. There was another big news involving Disney and involving Disney Plus, which is, we talked about the rumors of this for a few weeks now. After No Time to Die abandoned its November release date, Soul announced that it will debut on Disney Plus on December 25th, on Christmas Day. It will not be in the Mulan model. So it will not be a premium video on demand film. You won't have to pay additional money for it. It'll be like Artemis Fowl was. It'll be like Hamilton was. If you have Disney Plus, you can watch Soul on Disney Plus on Christmas Day. And so chalk that up as more, first of all, perhaps more additional income for Disney if it's driving subscriptions to Disney Plus. They're over 60 million reportedly now, and climbing. So perhaps this will be a net positive for them as far as subscriber growth. They've got another big event happening with The Mandalorian here in just a couple weeks. However, that is also money that they are not getting from box office revenue of any kind. Reportedly, the budget on Soul, $150 million plus. It's a Pixar film. They have big budgets because they're animated films and because they have top-level casts. You are doing away with all of the box office potential and all of the money that might have pulled in. Obviously, you still have to do a marketing spend. You still have put the budget into the film. So then it becomes about the math. Are you bringing in or retaining enough subscribers by putting Soul on Disney Plus? Then you are losing money by not putting it in the box office. And Disney now has put hundreds of millions of dollars of invested money on Disney Plus that they weren't planning to do. When you look at Hamilton, which they acquired for $70 million. When you look at Soul now, $150 million plus as far as that budget goes. When you look at Artemis Fowl, $100 million plus as far as the budget goes. Mulan is a bit of a weird story because that's a $200 million budget, but they are getting additional revenue on top of that, or at least they will be for another 6 weeks or so. But they have now put $500 million or more of invested money and projects that they had planned to release theatrically and which they would have maybe made money from, made a profit from in a theatrical run, straight onto Disney Plus, where you don't have to pay, again with the exception of Mulan, anything extra for those movies. And the question becomes, is that going to work for Disney? Do they see that as a model? Because if they see a huge spike in subscribers whenever they put something like Hamilton on Disney Plus, and they don't have to split that revenue with the theaters, then we might see them do this more. But we just don't know. I think this is really accelerating Disney's timeline as far as what they did and didn't want to try on Disney Plus. And honestly, I think if you were to go into the boardroom and be a fly on the wall, much like the fly on the vice president's head earlier this week, I think that you would probably hear some mixed results. My guess is they're probably pretty happy with Hamilton. My guess is they're probably not so happy with Mulan. And they're trying to figure out everything in between. So Soul now leaving the theatrical marketplace. Of course, theater owners not happy to hear that, because November, which was at one point looking like it could be promising, is now slipping away as December is slowly slipping away. Let's look at the updated 2020 release schedule. Now, as of 2 weeks, I think I made this 2 weeks ago, and already we've had to make all these revisions. Let's look at 2020. So No Time to Die is off of November 20th. It's moved to April 2nd, 2021, supposedly. November 20th, also, Soul was slated to open. It's off the theatrical release calendar entirely. It is now moving to Disney Plus on December 25th. Now, so right now we have November 25th, The Croods, A New Age. Reportedly, that is going to have an abbreviated theatrical window. So they're looking to put The Croods out in theaters on Thanksgiving, have it on VOD before Christmas. The question being, which theater chains, if they're open, are going to show this movie, knowing that it has the shortened theatrical window. AMC, as we reported, has shown some flexibility on that if they can partner with the studio and get some of that revenue from the VOD, but we don't know if any of the other theaters will show that. So we're now looking potentially, depending on the theater's policies and if they're open, at November now being, for major releases, completely wiped out. It's gone. So now we're looking at December. Free Guy just put out a trailer last week. It's still set for December 11th. Coming to America and Death on the Nile, still set for December 18th. Dune has now moved almost a year away to October 1st, 2021. Wonder Woman 1984, as of right now, still slated for Christmas Day. Another sequel, Escape Room 2, was scheduled for the December 30th opening day right at the end of the year. That has now moved to a slot, TBD 2021. So when you're looking at the rest of the year with No Time to Die and Soul now gone off of the release schedule, the only real blockbuster that's on there with respect to movies like Death on the Nile and Coming to America, perhaps Free Guy, but when you look at properties and you look at franchises, the only huge draw left on there is Wonder Woman 1984. And the question is, what is Warner Brothers going to do? Now, Patty Jenkins has publicly said that any rumors that Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be going to streaming or going to HBO Max are not true. That is not going to happen. It is going to come out in theaters. But is it going to come out in theaters on December 25th? That's a great question that we just don't know yet. And it's going to be the same pattern that we have seen so much with what's going on. If things are getting better, if numbers are going down, if theater chains can open, then I bet it probably will. But if things are going poorly, Warner Brothers is not going to dump Wonder Woman out on Christmas Day, especially if there are fewer theaters open now than there are now. And so we are still very much in a wait and see mode, but it is looking more and more possible that the almost the entirety of 2020 is going to be a complete washout theatrically. That is disastrous. That's not what anybody wanted or thought they could see. They didn't think. I didn't think this would be the case. I don't think a lot of people thought this would be the case, or maybe just hoped it wouldn't be. But it's not just the movies that didn't come out. When you look at other movies like Onward, which has less than $100 million gross, I mean, that's a lot of money that Disney again left on the table, or was left on the table. They didn't leave it there because of what happened. It went straight to Disney Plus. You know, you miss out on that revenue. So Disney obviously is doing all right in that they're making, they have 60 million people subscribing to a service that you can pay $5 a month for. You do the math on that. But they're also investing hundreds of $millions in capital and projects into that thing. So we will see what happens. Now, if you're a theater owner, you're now looking at Christmas Day. Soul was the next one you might be looking at. I think most people probably had a suspicion that it wasn't going to be there. Now you're looking at Christmas Day to see what happens with Wonder Woman 1984. Only time will tell. We shall see. Let's take a look back at a time when people were going to the movies still and see it's kind of an historic weekend. Back in 1994, it's hard to believe this was, 26 years ago at this point, but Pulp Fiction opened in theaters nationwide on October 14th, 1994, after sweeping the Cannes Film Festival earlier that summer. It would go on to be a pop culture sensation and make a lot of money, but it was the top of the box office back on October 14th, 1994. Then you have the second week of The Specialist, starring Sylvester Stallone and Sharon Stone. It's a very alliterative movie. Then Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was a box office disappointment. It's up there competing with my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street franchise film, right up there with the original and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I love Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It opened in third place that week. Then you have The River Wild with Meryl Streep and David Strathairn and Kevin Bacon. Pretty nifty little action movie if you haven't seen that. I sounded like I was 80 years old. Pretty nifty. That's okay. And then Little Giants with Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill. I think one of those movies that people of my generation probably remember, but not many other generations. Opening there at number 5. Some other notable films that opened this week in box office history. Look Who's Talking, another generational film. If you walked around a movie store or a video store anytime between 1989 and 1994, I'm sure you remember this poster and this art. Look Who's Talking, which is, if you haven't seen it, is about a talking baby with Bruce Willis's voice. He doesn't talk. It's all like mental telepathy. It's also got Kirstie Alley and John Travolta in it. That opened at number 1 back in 1989 on this weekend. Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone, a more successful Sylvester Stallone movie than The Specialist, opened back at number 1 back in 1993. Then in 2003, this was a good weekend for Quentin Tarantino. Kill Bill Volume 1 opened in the top 5, I believe at number 1, and then Intolerable Cruelty, a Coen Brothers film. You had Tarantino and the Coen Brothers in the top 5 in the same weekend back in 2003. And then in 2012, Argo opened at number 2. It would go on to win Best Picture. Sinister opened at number 3. That's one of the more recent horror films, at least the ones made in the last decade, that I enjoy, with Ethan Hawke. So we're getting into that Halloween season, but also getting into that prestigious Oscar season. So a lot of movies opening up. We talked last week about how movies like The Departed and Gravity and a lot of big big Oscar movies came out in October. We're going to see this as we keep doing these flashbacks, because this would be, in any normal year, kind of the official beginning of award season. Let's take a look at what people are watching at home, starting on Amazon. As we mentioned, Mulan, right now the number 1 film for Amazon rentals. We don't know actual numbers, but we know that right now the $30, and it's the same deal. You get $30 to purchase. It's not a rental. $30 to purchase Mulan is number 1. Then you have The King of Staten Island at number 2. The Doorman, which stars Jean Reno of The Professional, and Ruby Rose there at number 3. That's a new 2020 film. Then at number 4, Antebellum, Halloween Town, a Disney Channel film that people are eating up like Halloween candy this time of year. The Hunt, Sonic the Hedgehog, The Silencing, and Trolls World Tour, several 2020 movies. And then at number 10, Hocus Pocus. People love that Hocus Pocus there at number 10. Let's look at what people are watching over on iTunes. Trump Card, which is the new documentary from Dinesh D'Souza. If that's your bag, that's there at number 1. Then you have Ava at number 2. That's a holdover from last week. Then Mulan 2020 at number 3. Limitless, starring Bradley Cooper, at number 4. Maybe people saw Robert De Niro had another movie out, and they're like, what was that one with Bradley Cooper? And they rented that one. Then Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo, which is a new animated film from Warner Brothers. And then new movies all the way. Actually, Ava was the only holdover from last week. New movies at 6 through 10. The Doorman, Hocus Pocus, Save Yourselves, The Assistant, which came out earlier this year, and then we have Upgrade at number 10. If you haven't seen Upgrade, watch. If you want to see a Lee Winnell Film Festival, watch Upgrade and The Invisible Man. Lee Winnell is doing great things, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do next. Let's finally look at what people are watching over on Netflix. At number 1, you have the newest film in the Adam Sandler Netflix deal, Hubie Halloween, which I have not seen, but looks terrible. It might be great. I don't know. It doesn't look great, but maybe it is. Then American Murder, The Family Next Door stays right up there at number 2. American Pie presents Girls Rules. They're kind of going the National Lampoon route. They're now presenting films. That's there at number 3. Columbiana at number 4. Enola Holmes stays in the top 10 at number 5, followed by Big Daddy, an Adam Sandler film. That always seems to happen. A new Adam Sandler movie comes out, and then an old Adam Sandler movie is still on the chart. That's because Adam Sandler is getting paid a lot of money from Netflix, and they want his movies to do well. Then you have The Outpost at number 7, and 8, 9, and 10 are Super Monsters, Dia de los Monsters, which is a special from a Canadian-American animated show that I've actually never seen. Then The Croods at number 9, and Secret Life of Pets at number 10. We've seen them on and off the charts this summer. So that is the show for this week. It's a bit of an abbreviated show compared to normal. Like I said, we have a lot of really cool things in the works. A lot of really fun and exciting stuff that I'm excited for you to see and excited for you to hear. We will see what has happened. Have any other movies been delayed at the box office? Or is there some salvaging this 2020 box office season? There's really not, but if there's any scrap of anything left for theater owners, perhaps we will find out in the next few weeks. Thank you so much for watching, and before I go, I do want to thank these producer-level patrons of mine over on Patreon. You can find me at patreon.com/Dan Murrell, and these producer-level patrons are awesome. We have so much fun over there, not just if you're at the producer level, at any level. We're doing 31 days of Halloween all month. Every day we're doing little write-ups of the movies that we're watching and recaps. Last weekend for the producers, we did a Schmodown study session. We have a weekly show a bi-weekly show, or twice a month. I don't know how those things work. Anyway, twice a month we do a show called Dan Decides. Yesterday actually, I did a Marvel ranking episode where I ranked the MCU that went like over 2.5 hours long. It was so much fun. I would love for you to come check me out. Patreon.com/Dan Murrell. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. It's called All My Movies. You can find the audio version on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, everywhere you can find audio. You can find the video version over on the Schmodown Entertainment Network. You can find the links down there below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you this time next week. Stay safe.